What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here. Let's talk Lineages and Heritages in the latest Tales of the Valiant preview packet. For those of you who are unaware, Kobold Press's Tales of the Valiant is now out on Kickstarter. It is doing gangbusters numbers, and they released a 63-page preview packet. I've already covered the classes, and we do have lineages and heritages in this document, some of which were already released in playtest packet number 1. So we're going to look at them and compare the two to see what the differences are. We also do have a brief mention of the lineage and heritages in the design diary number 4. So we'll start with that. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. All right, so for lineage, it says the dwarf lineage now has a more standard base walking speed of 30 feet, and the elf lineage no longer grants night vision. I still think it's odd that they decided to change dark vision to night vision, but it is what it is. It says heritages are no longer nested under the commonly associated lineages. Instead, they are listed in the distinct section of their own. That makes sense. Alignment is removed from all heritage options. PC alignment is an optional rule, which is pretty much what we're seeing from Dungeons & Dragons as a whole at this point. The Cloud Heritage feature Touch of Magic now grants only a cantrip and a single first ring spell. The Cosmopolitan Heritage features Street Smarts is altered to have a more specific mechanic interaction to help you become unlost. The Grove Heritage no longer includes the Beast Affinity feature, but don't worry, the Beast Affinity feature has a new home with the Wildlands Heritage. The Stone Heritage no longer includes the Dwarven Armor Training feature. We heard your concerns, featuring the feature in playtest feedback. Okay, so we can hear, again, at the very least, that the playtest feedback is being considered. So let's go ahead, and we'll pop back up here to Lineage and Heritage, and we want to go to playtest packet number 1. All right, so let's get down to our lineage and heritage section. So here it is. As a reminder, lineage and heritage are separate now in the terms, well, those are two separate things. One is more biology and one is more upbringing, if that makes sense, right? When you create your character, you choose your hereditary traits are for human and a fantasy lineage. We'll also use this section to determine if your heritage tied to your lineage, etc. So let's go ahead and see what the first one is here. So your lineage dictates certain traits about your character: age, size, and speed. Then we have lineage descriptions here. So first up we have is, let's shift this over. Oops. We have Beastkin, which I don't believe was one of the originals. We had originally dwarf, elf, human. All right, so this Beastkin one is entirely new. So let's take a look. Born between civilizations and wildlands, Beastkin are very as varied as the animal kingdom itself. All right, so this is your anthropomorphic animal choice, right? You could be specific: wings of a hawk, tail of a scorpion, tall rabbit ears, massive owl eyes, crab-like carapace, etc. Some Beastkin show only slight similarities to their bestial forerunners, while others resemble bipedal versions of their animal kin. Okay, so what do they get? They reach adulthood much quicker. They reach adulthood with 5 years, and they usually only live to 20 to 30 years. Their size is medium. Okay, so you actually have a choice. If it's between 4 and 8 feet, it's medium. If it's less than 4, it's considered small. Speed is 30 feet. You get perception and survival proficiencies, natural weapons of some kind. Your natural weapons can be used for unarmed strikes. Deal a d6 plus your strength or dex modifier. And whatever the damage type is, right? If it could be bludgeoning, it could be slashing, could be piercing. Natural adaptation. So this is going to be tied to the type of creature, right? So avian. You have leathery, feathery, or gossamer wings. You have a fly speed equal to your walking speed. You can't fly while wearing medium heavy armor. Carrying a heavy load or a creature of your size or larger while flying reduces your speed by half. So Kobold Press is flat out giving you fly speed at level 1. Now, I've come on record before and said I don't think it's super game-breaking to have fly speeds very early on. Wizards of the Coast seems to feel the opposite, as they've pretty much changed anybody that has wings or a in-based fly speed is either delayed significantly, or you just cannot get a fly speed at base from at least what we're seeing in the new, what are they calling them, species in the 2024 rules revision. But I like that they included this bit because everybody's always trying to carry somebody else when they're flying, right? Every flying creature I've ever met, anybody who ever plays a flying character is like, can I carry so-and-so? And at least they were smart enough here, Kobold Press, to put in that information, which I do appreciate. Carrying a heavy load or a creature of your size or larger while flying reduces your speed by half. There you go. Agile, sharp claws, cloven hooves, robust limbs. You have a climb speed equals your walking speed. In addition, you have advantage on saving throws made to avoid being knocked prone. So this is any kind of seemingly jumpy, climby type creature. Aquatic. All right, this is going to give you a swim speed equal to your walking speed, and you can hold your breath for 20 minutes. Sturdy. This might be more like a bovine style creature or a buffalo or something. When you aren't wearing armor, you have a natural AC of 13 plus your dex modifier. Additionally, you count as one size larger when determining your carrying capacity and the weight you can push or drag. Okay, I think this is I think it's pretty good. Remember here, though, this is just the lineage. The heritage comes separately, which can enhance things further. So this is just base, okay? So this is just kind of the biology of the creature. And I do think this does a pretty good job of capturing the variety of different animal types. I still personally, and I understand the change to this beastkin concept, right? Because we have so many animal races in 5e, right? We have the tabaxi and the aarakocra and the turtle and the locatha and the grung and all these different kinds of animal races. Even like the leonin, right? We have 2 different cat races. You have like 4 different bird ones: kenku, aarakocra. There's another one that I can't think of off the top of my head. You have lizards. You have all these different, things. And I actually kind of almost like that better because I feel like you can get a little more specific in the type of creature that you're choosing. Whereas if you were to choose, say, like beastkin, it's a very broad spectrum, and you're kind of just lumping them all together under one umbrella, and then you kind of just tweak it to fit your character a little more. This kind of reminds me of like the shifter from Eberron, is the same kind of a concept. I don't know. I personally like having I from a purely space saving standpoint, beastkin makes more sense, where you choose like a base lineage and then kind of further quantify what animal you're emulating. But I do feel like you could do a little bit better in my mind if you had multiple. But I understand the concept. I do think this does a relatively good job of distinguishing, the different animal abilities here. I don't think any one is particularly overtly strong. I like that they all get a natural weapon of some kind. That's a nice inborn feature. You also get a couple of skill proficiencies, which is nice. And then, yeah, I mean, I think the avian ones flat out get flight right out the gate, which is what you want as you're being a flying creature, which makes sense to me. The climby ones get to climb, you know. The aquatic ones get to swim and hold their breath, and then the tougher ones get kind of an AC built in, and they're a little bit stronger. I think for the most part, you should be able to find the animal you're trying to emulate to fit them into one of the categories, or possibly both. For example, like in theory, something like a crocodile could be covered under the aquatic one for the swimming capability, or they could possibly be covered under the sturdy concept because they have scales and like sturdy armor. So you have some leeway depending on what you want to do. So I do appreciate it. I think it does a good job, albeit kind of generic. All right, so then we have the dwarf. Now, we did have dwarf in the playtest, so let's go ahead and take a look. So base dwarf in the playtest, original one from playtest packet 1, was medium size, movement speed 25 feet, night vision out to 60 feet, advantage on saving throws against being poisoned and resistance to poison damage, and an additional hit point per level. Let's see what happened. Okay. Still medium, your movement speed has been bumped up to 30, still got night vision out to 60 feet. Everything else remains the same, right? Advantage on saving throws against being poisoned, resistance to poison damage, and dwarven toughness, an extra hit point per level. Next up, we have the elf, which we also did have in the playtest. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the elf. We had medium size, speed of 30 feet. We had night vision out to 60 feet. Proficiency in perception, advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put you to sleep, and trance. Okay, what do we have here? We have base movement speed of 30 feet. We have proficiency in perception, advantage on saving throws against being charmed, magic can't put you to sleep, and trance. I don't know why they're ditching the night vision concept for elves, right? The dark vision. Elves have always in Dungeons and Dragons at a point have had whether low light vision, infravision, or something similar. And interesting to see them just remove it outright. I wonder what the design decision behind that was. Maybe it's explained. I didn't really seem like it was explained in the design diary, so who knows? All right, moving on to the humans. Humans here in the playtest packet were medium size, movement speed of 30 feet, proficiency in a skill of your choice, and a talent of your choice. So similar to what variant human is in 5e. Similar things I'm assuming here. Human, you're going to get 30 feet movement speed, skill and talent of your choice. Yeah, all right, so that seems to be the same. Now let's take a look at elements of a heritage. Dictates certain abilities you have from your connection to a group or society. Heritage includes all manner of tangible and intangible cultural elements such as architecture, works of fine art, folklore, tradition, language, etc. So your languages are determined by your heritage, which makes sense, right? No one is it just immediately knows a language just for existing. You have to learn a language, so it makes sense that based on where you're brought up would determine the language that you have. They are saying by default all characters know the common language and one other language. I do appreciate that because, you know, as much fun as it for people who are like, I don't know common, it just makes the game easier if everybody does. But obviously you can work with your DM if you want to change something specifically. So it says choose from the standard language table, and the DM might let you choose an esoteric one, perhaps, and then you get the various heritage options, right? So there are recommended heritages for the type of lineage you choose, but it is not a definitive answer. You can see they're recommending Slayer and Wildlands for Beastkin, Fireforge and Stone for Dwarf, Cloud and Grove for Elf, and Cosmopolitan and Nomadic for Human, but you are not limited to that. You could be a Cosmopolitan Beastkin if you so chose. Okay? So here is the standard languages, and then again, here is the esoteric languages. Pretty much what you expect. This kind of matches, I think they call them exotic languages or something like that in the 2014 Player's Handbook. We'll move on to Cloud Heritage here, which we can compare because a Cloud Heritage did exist for back in the playtest packet 1. So it says, let's see, Cloud Heritage characters were raised with the values and traditions of the Cloud Elf community. Okay, so Touch of Magic, you choose a school of magic for which you have an affinity. Learn a cantrip of your choice from that school of magic. When you reach 3rd level, choose a first ring, again, or first level spell from that same school of magic. You learn this and can cast it at its lowest ring. Once you cast this spell, you must finish a long rest before you can cast it again using this feature. Your spellcasting ability for these spells is Charisma, Intelligence, or Wisdom. Choose when creating your character. All right, on the playtest, I think it gave you more. It gave you a 1st level spell, and when you hit 5th level, it also gave you a 3rd level spell. Additionally, you also have proficiency in Arcana, and you know Common and 2 additional languages of your choice. I believe that all remains the same. Now, I'm going to say what I said last time. I think it's a large detriment to Kobold Press to not include the newer language that Wizards of the Coast has started to add to all of their options, where it says, you know, once you cast this spell, you must finish a long rest before you can cast it again using this feature. And then it says, well, it does say, so this might be it. Maybe I'm oversimplifying, where it says you learn this spell and can cast it at its lowest ring. Perhaps you learn this spell, but Wizards of the Coast has added in language to their all of the newer kind of what are racial spells from the various races that exist in 5e currently, that you can cast this spell once with this feature without expending a spell slot. You can also cast this spell with any spell slots you have. And that means, like, hey, if I'm a wizard and I take for my Cloud Heritage Shield, means I get Shield once a day for free from the Cloud Heritage, but then if I also want to use my arcane spell slots to cast Shield, I can do so. Now, again, perhaps you learn this spell and can cast it at its lowest ring. Perhaps that means that when it says you learn it, that's it, but I could use a little more clarification there, in my opinion. And it also seems like a large step backwards to not include that language there, or at least not imply that that's the case, because, yeah, if I take this and I have a spell, especially if I'm getting access to a spell I might not normally have, like an arcane spell on a divine caster, it's nice to be able to use my spell slots to cast it, And I think that that's a solid move, so I would recommend changing that if that's not, or making it clear to understand. Next up is the Cosmopolitan Heritage, which originally was listed under human. I like that they separated it out. You used to get street smarts, which was while you can't be lost except by magical means while in a city or urban environment. You also can't be surprised except unless you're asleep or otherwise incapacitated. Whenever you make a check related to understanding the purpose or significance of a building, right, or object from a culture you aren't familiar with, you add your proficiency bonus to the roll. If you have proficiency in the associated thing, you double it. And language, common in 2 additional languages. Now, they said they changed street smarts to have more actual mechanical ability here. While in the city or other urban environments, you have advantage on ability checks made to avoid getting lost and checks made to find a particular kind of business or other destination open to the public. Additionally, while you are in such environments, okay, so they just made it advantage on the ability checks. Worldly wisdom, when you make a check related to understanding the purpose, that's basically the same, and common in 2 languages. Okay, so that's more or less exactly as it was. It's just the change to street smart to make it a little more mechanically understandable how it works. All right, we have the Fire Forge Heritage. Let's get up to that here, which previously gave us proficiency with glassblower's tools or smith's tools. Pick one, and then you get double the proficiency bonus for any ability check made using that. Resistance to fire damage, speak, read, and write Ignin, in addition to your choices of languages, and you learn the mending cantrip, and you can cast it as an action. Normally, it's a minute to cast. However, when you can use this trait to repair objects made of metal only, such as reconnecting 2 halves of a broken sword. Okay, you gain proficiency with now Smith's tools, and proficiency bonus is doubled, so just no option, just Smith's tools. You are still resistant to fire damage. You still speak, read, and write Ignin, and they kept the Reforge ability and then common in 1 additional language of your choice. I do still think it's interesting that the place in which you were raised and the people who raised you somehow imparts the ability to be resistant to fire damage, which seems like sort of an inborn ability. But I think if you take it, and I think I mentioned this the last time I reviewed it, if someone that's constantly exposed to extremely hot temperatures all the time, your body begins to acclimate to those hot temperatures, right? If you constantly live in ice cold temperatures, you may be able to go outside in a t-shirt when it's 30 degrees out because that's normal, like that's nothing to you if you're constantly living in sub-zero temperatures, whereas other people may be cold. So I think that's kind of how that's being represented in the resistance to fire damage. At least that's my headcanon for it. All right, now we have Grove Heritage, which I believe we had previously under the elves. Yes, this is sort of your woodland heritage. You can communicate simple ideas with beasts and have advantage on checks made to interact with non-hostile creatures. I think that was moved to the wildlands lineage or heritage. Climbing speed equal to your walking speed. Proficiency with the long sword, short bow, short sword, and long sword, short bow, long bow. And common in another language. Let's see what it looks like now. It is... Let's see. We have... Oh, just less. Just one less thing. Climbing speed equal to your walking speed, proficiency with longsword, short bow, longbow, and then common in 1 other language. Interesting that they didn't replace the ability they removed with something simple. Right? Because everybody else seems to get at least 3 abilities, and you just have Canopy Walker and Elf Weapon Training. You don't get everybody else gets at least a 3rd ability. This, I mean, not to say that you need to copy the player's handbook, but perhaps, or maybe it's added in later on. I was going to say there's that option to, hide in natural occurring things that, Wood Elves have in the 2014 player's handbook. Perhaps that's been added later on, but I do feel like Grove Lineage needs a little something extra. All right, Nomadic Heritage. This was previously here. Here we go. Resilient. You have advantage on checks or saves made to resist debilitating weather effects. Additionally, when you complete a short rest, you can reduce your exhaustion level by 1. Which is a nice feature to have that. Once per long rest, you can use that ability. Proficiency and survival and common in 1 language of your choice. Okay, I think this is exactly the same. Yep. So, I said that everybody else had 3. The Nomadic Heritage only has 2, but the ability to reduce your exhaustion level by 1 on a short rest, I think, is a pretty powerful ability and possibly necessitates only having 2 options there. But moving on to the Stone Heritage, which was previously under the Dwarves. Okay, here we go. Dwarven weapon training, proficiency with battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, warhammer. Dwarven armor training, proficiency with light and medium armor. Additionally, your speed is not reduced by wearing heavy armor, regardless of your strength score. Proficiency with an artisan tools of your choice from smith's tools, brewer's tools, or mason's tools. An eye for quality. Whenever you make an ability check related to the real origin of metalwork or masonry, you can add your proficiency bonus to the roll. If you add your proficiency, if you have proficiency in the relevant skill, you double your proficiency roll. This is a replacement for stone cutting, which I think is worded a lot better to be more useful. Stone heritage, you get dwarven weapon proficiency, battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, warhammer. Tool proficiency, and then eye for quality. Make an ability check related to the origin of metalwork or masonry. So that's all the same. The only thing is they removed the weapon aspect, or the armor training aspect of it. Now, Slayer Heritage is entirely new. This is characters who were raised with the values and tradition of the Beastkin Slayer communities. Dedicate their lives to hunting other powerful predators that might topple natural ecosystems, okay? Ferocity. You have proficiency in the Intimidation Skill. Any non-magical beast whose challenge rating is equal to or less than your proficiency bonus that targets you with an attack must first make a wisdom check contested by your charisma intimidation score that you would roll. If you succeed, the beast must choose a new target or lose the attack. If you fail, it attacks normally. If you attack or deal damage to a creature or cast a spell that affects a hostile creature, this effect ends for all beasts that you can see or hear you. Tracker. When you make a check to spot or track a creature, you add your proficiency bonus to the roll. If you have proficiency in the skill or tool being used, add double your proficiency bonus. I feel like Tracker should give you proficiency in survival skills, but I get it. Okay. And then common and additional language. And then lastly, the Wildlands Heritage. We get Beast Affinity. This is where it appears. Using gestures and sounds, you can communicate simple ideas with beasts, and you have advantage on checks made to interact with non-hostile beasts. And Shepherd's Gift. You have advantage on you have proficiency in the animal handling skill. Any non-magical beast whose CR is equal to or less than your proficiency bonus that targets you with an attack must make a wisdom check contested by your animal handling. If you succeed, the beast must choose a new target or lose the attack. If you fail, it attacks normally. Interesting. So it's basically, they're exactly the same abilities here. Ferocity and Shepherd's Gift. Ferocity is just intimidation, and you're basically, staring down and kind of like squaring off with the animal. Whereas Shepherd's Gift is more of like a kindly, like, oh, it's okay. Animal handling. It's interesting to see that those, like, you could potentially just combine those into pick one, and then they have Tracker versus Beast Affinity. I think that is the end of all of the lineages and heritages. So there you go, folks. That is all we see, at least in the playtest packet. Nice to see an entire new lineage and 2 heritages added to this. Also, again, for those of you who had comments and complaints about things in the playtest packet 1, you see that those have been heard and adjustments have been made. Next up we have is backgrounds. I think that that'll be pretty quick because there's not a whole lot there. Talents will be next, which is, again, the replacement for feats. And then I think after that we have spellcasting, and that will pretty much round out everything contained within this. Oh, and there is actually some sample monsters in here as well. We can take a look at those, and then I might just go into what we had talked about in a previous video, which is comparing the various monsters from this to their 5e counterparts, doing a side-by-side to see how they stack up and how they were changed. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.